Oh, the housing market still struggling, as we all know, despite government intervention this year, from tax incentives to put pressure on Fannie and Freddie to lower principal value amounts. Are your tax dollars being wasted? Is it time for Uncle Sam to get out of the way? Greg Rand is the CEO of OwnAmerica.com. We're pleased to have him join us this hour. Hey, Greg, welcome to you. So let's start with the news of the day. The pending home sale showed a slight improvement, but if you compare this month to this month last year, still 2 percentage points below. So what do the pending home sales numbers say today about where we are in the housing recovery, if you can even call it a recovery yet?
Well, the month-to-month numbers don't tell us a whole lot, okay? What's interesting is that talking about government intervention, don't forget that a year ago we had the first round of the first-time homebuyer tax credit. So last year's November numbers were through the roof. So the fact that this year they're off from last year is actually okay, because last year's were gangbusters. But I usually try to get away from analyzing month to month, because the real trend, you have to stand back in real estate. It's a slow-moving animal. You have to stand back and watch these things kind of develop over time. And what we're going to find is that we look back at 2010, this was the bottom of the home sales numbers, most likely as a year, but probably not the bottom on home prices because of the foreclosure inventory that hasn't hit the market yet.
Well, you hit all kinds of topics there for you. I want to start with the incentive program, the first-time homebuyer tax credit. Right. Do you think now that we're a year later, it was ultimately good or bad? We did get a shot in the arm for the industry, but when it ended, sales fell off a cliff.
That's right, and I think in retrospect it was bad, because demand for housing demonstrated by the home sales numbers being great in the fourth quarter last year, being gangbusters in the first quarter of 2010, but then, as you said, falling off the cliff afterwards. Everybody kind of knew that we were going to be stealing transactions from the future, but then when it happened, people lost confidence, because we're trying to give ourselves a tipping point of consumer optimism. What we got instead is kind of a roller coaster ride, which is the last thing we need. So I'd like to see them stop with the incentives, because we get an up spike, we get a down spike, and we can't figure out when the recovery is actually here.
Now on to the foreclosure fiasco, the robo-signing scandal, if you will. It's delaying the clearing out process. You're saying because of this, prices may soften further. Where do you foresee the bottom in prices?
Bottom in prices on a national level, I think, is going to be next year. And that's because the foreclosure inventory that's been held back, and frankly, I think the robo-signing scandal, I believe, was really an election year stunt, because listen, the message was the banks are evil, you're a victim if you're a borrower, you can't pay your mortgage, and the government's here to help. And at the end of the day, everything they've done to try to prevent foreclosures hasn't worked, because if you're not paying for your house, you can't keep it. That's the bottom line. So I think you're going to see home prices go down next year precisely because of the overcorrection of that foreclosure inventory. But it's important that homeowners know that doesn't necessarily mean that their home has lost value. That's just an aggregate of all the home sales that happened in that period of time are going to be lower priced because of the foreclosure inventory.
Mortgage rates, as you know, climbing.
Right.
Government Treasury is urging Fannie and Freddie to lower principal values, pass those mortgages on. What do you think of some of these remodification plans? I know you're against government intervention in the housing market, but what needs to be done to really boost housing, because it's such a drag on the broad economy?
It's going to sound crazy, but government can't do much of anything except for keeping mortgage rates stable between 5 and 6% would be fine. All right, trying to surgically keep people in houses they're not paying for is not going to work. Lowering principal balances, what they don't seem to realize is that a couple of years ago when they started talking about the government's going to help you, we're going to help you make your mortgage payment, we're going to lower your principal balance, they never foresaw that mortgage defaults would go up. When you announce a government benefit, they never seem to realize that announce a government benefit and the line is going to form there and then stretch around the corner before you know it. So every time they say, you're a victim, we're going to help you, the victim list gets longer. So they have to stop those kind of things. Just stimulate the housing economy by leaving it alone and keeping mortgage rates stable in the 5s.
All right, Greg Rand, thanks for your time and insights.
Thank you.
Have a happy